John Goodman. What if the thing a 74-year-old man regrets most in his life isn't a bad decision, a wasted opportunity, or even his years of heavy drinking, but a friendship he's not sure he can ever fully get back? That's exactly where we're starting today. Because when this actor finally opened up about it, he wasn't talking about a role he turned down or a mistake he made on set. He was talking about a person, someone he loved, someone whose show got cancelled overnight, taking a piece of his own life down with it. Stick around, because this story has everything: a hard childhood, a torn knee that accidentally launched an acting career, one of the most beloved sitcom families in TV history, a legendary run with two of Hollywood's most brilliant filmmaking brothers, a battle with alcohol he won, and a friendship that blew up in the most public way imaginable. Let's get into it. John Goodman was born on June 20, 1952, in St. Louis, Missouri, the younger of two sons. His dad passed away when John was still too young to really remember him, which meant his mother, Virginia, had to raise three kids mostly on her own, bouncing between jobs as a waitress and later a salesperson. Money was tight, life wasn't easy, and John, who was a big kid from early on, became an easy target for bullies at school. It's the kind of thing that either breaks a person or toughens them up, and for John, it did a bit of both. He found some stability in the Boy Scouts, sticking with the program all the way through 9th grade, because honestly, it gave him a place to belong when things at home and school felt shaky. He was also a huge comic book reader, DC Comics first, then he graduated to Marvel, and his older brother introduced him to comedy albums and bebop jazz records. That combination, believe it or not, gave young John a natural feel for rhythm and timing that would end up serving him incredibly well decades later, though nobody could have guessed that at the time. In high school, it was football that gave him his outlet. He played offensive guard and defensive tackle, and he was good enough at it that Southwest Missouri State University offered him a scholarship. So in 1970, John showed up on campus with a plan: play ball, get a degree, figure out life from there. Then, during his very first year, he tore his ACL. Just like that, the football plan was dead in the water. Here's the twist, though. Sometimes the worst moment turns out to be the door you needed. With football gone, John wandered, almost by accident, into the theater department. He wasn't chasing some childhood dream of acting. He just needed something to do. He tried out for a play without expecting much of anything, and he got the part. He's talked about that first time standing on a stage using the word smitten, which honestly might be the last word you'd expect from a broad-shouldered ex-football player. But it's exactly right. That's where he met people like Kathleen Turner and Tess Harper, fellow students who were falling in love with the craft right alongside him. Suddenly, John wasn't looking for a backup plan anymore. He'd found his actual plan. By August of 1975, he packed up and moved to New York City with a theater degree, a small loan from his brother, and an apartment in Hell's Kitchen, back when that neighborhood was still rough around the edges. He waited tables to survive. He even tried bouncing at a club for exactly one night, got a crash course from a tough-as-nails German head bouncer on how to handle troublemakers, and decided that particular job wasn't for him. He took whatever acting work he could scrape together: off-Broadway shows, dinner theater gigs out in Ohio, a production of the musical 1776, down in Miami. None of it made him famous. All of it made him better. His first film role came in 1983 in a movie called Eddie Macon's Run, a small part that basically nobody noticed. But things started shifting in 1986, with True Stories, directed by David Byrne of Talking Heads fame. John played a lonely, sweet-natured guy named Louis Fine, who puts an ad out on local TV looking for a wife. It was his first real leading role, and he said he genuinely loved making that film. He even got to sing in it. Then came 1987, and everything changed for good. Joel and Ethan Coen cast him in Raising Arizona, opposite Nicolas Cage, playing an escaped convict named Gail Snopes, who had all the confidence in the world, and maybe 2 working brain cells. John has said the audition itself was one of the best hours of his career. He, Joel, and Ethan Basically just messed around and had fun. And he walked in not caring whether he landed the part. That looseness is exactly what made the performance land. He's talked about how the Coens write dialogue so precisely that it only sounds improvised because you've rehearsed it enough times to make it feel like your own words. You don't try to improve on what they hand you. You just let it breathe. Now here's where the story takes a huge turn. In March of 1988, John was on stage in Los Angeles, performing in Antony and Cleopatra, when, unbeknownst to him, an ABC talent scout was sitting in the audience. The network was scrambling to cast a husband for a comedian named Roseanne Barr in a new sitcom. John walked into the audition room, told Roseanne to scoot over, she told him to shut up, and he sat down anyway. Everyone in that room knew instantly they had something special. He's compared it to how easy it feels to just roll out of bed. No overthinking, no forcing it. But here's a detail that a lot of people don't know. Roseanne originally wanted her boyfriend at the time, Tom Arnold, to play the role. The producers pushed back, insisting on someone with real acting chops. That quiet tension, the fact that John wasn't her first pick, sat underneath the entire 9-year run of the show, mostly invisible, but always there. And John handled it the only way he knew how, by showing up, being genuinely funny, being a true partner to Roseanne, and never once making the tension the headline. Roseanne premiered on October 18, 1988, and it exploded almost immediately, pulling in over 36 million viewers an episode by the end of its first season. Numbers like that are almost unthinkable today, when audiences are scattered across 100 different streaming platforms. But the show connected because it did something most sitcoms of that era wouldn't touch. It showed working-class family life honestly, without turning it into either a punchline or a tragedy. The Connors fought about money, the way real families with real money problems fight. Messy, ongoing, never perfectly resolved. Dan Connor felt like somebody's actual dad, somebody you might run into at the hardware store. That's an incredibly hard thing to pull off as an actor, and John did it so well that he racked up 7 straight Emmy nominations for the role. He never won a single one, which remains one of the more baffling snubs in television history. He did take home a Golden Globe in 1993, and during his speech he thanked his wife, then joked he'd also like to thank his personal trainer. Except he didn't actually have one. Classic John. While all this was happening on television, his film career was running on a totally different track. In 1991, he teamed back up with the Coen brothers for Barton Fink, playing Charlie Meadows, a friendly hotel neighbor who turns out to be hiding something much darker. John reportedly stayed in character between takes, as the story built toward its reveal, which apparently unsettled some of his co-stars in ways that felt a little too real. And the film's climactic hallway fire scene, with Charlie walking through flames holding a shotgun, remains one of the most unforgettable images in the Coens' entire body of work. Behind the camera, though, things weren't always smooth. John has openly admitted he drank heavily during much of this period, showing up hungover, drinking on set, and the scary part is that it didn't visibly tank his performances, which almost made the problem easier to ignore. He finally got sober in 2007, and he's described it in the simplest possible terms: it saved his life. Life on the Roseanne set wasn't always easy either. During season 2, Roseanne reportedly drew up a list of crew members she wanted fired once she gained more creative control. In 1989, she clashed badly with the show's original creator, Matt Williams, and basically gave an ultimatum: him or her. John sided with Roseanne, alongside co-stars Laurie Metcalf and a young George Clooney. Williams left the show. That's not a small thing. Taking a side in a fight that serious tells you a lot about where John's loyalty stood, and it stood with his friend. By the time the original series wrapped, John was pulling in $300,000 an episode, making him one of the highest-paid actors on television at the time. The show ended in 1997, after 222 episodes, having permanently reshaped what a working-class American family could look like on primetime TV. John has said the ending felt sudden, not because the show wasn't ready to end, but because 9 years of showing up to the same set, the same people, Every single week builds a kind of momentum that's genuinely hard to just walk away from. So he did what he'd always done. He threw himself back into film work. In 2000, he reunited with the Coens for "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?", playing Big Dan Teague, a one-eyed Bible salesman with a violent secret. He's talked with real enjoyment about the scene where his character gets whacked with a tree branch, joking about George Clooney watching the whole thing while casually eating fried chicken between takes. He kept the streak going with roles in Monsters Ball and Storytelling in 2001, then Intolerable Cruelty with the Coens again in 2003. The work never slowed down, but the center of gravity, the weekly table read, the built-in family, the show, was gone, and that freedom, while real, wasn't entirely comfortable for him. Then in 1998 came Walter Sobchak in The Big Lebowski, a Vietnam veteran, a bowling league fanatic, a man who smashes up a car with a crowbar while screaming about the concept of aggression. Walter was loosely based on real-life screenwriter John Milius, and John studied his mannerisms and speech patterns closely to build the character from the outside in. That famous car-smashing scene took 17 takes, and they destroyed a brand-new car every single time. The production just ate the cost because what John was delivering was worth every dollar. Walter Sobchak has been quoted and imitated for decades since, because there's something universally hilarious about a man with zero self-doubt being completely, unshakably certain about everything. In 2001, he lent his voice to Sully in Monsters, Inc., spending over 100 hours in the recording booth, sometimes running 50 takes on a single line just to nail the tone. He's said that once Pixar brought Billy Crystal into the booth to record scenes together, the energy between them just took off. He'd feed off whatever Billy gave him and build from there. 10 years later, in 2011, he dropped 60 pounds to play a studio executive in the silent film The Artist, a role that forced him to act with zero dialogue, relying entirely on physical expression. He studied silent-era stars like Roscoe Arbuckle to get the physical language right, putting in far more prep than the size of the role would suggest was necessary, which, if you've been paying attention, is basically his whole approach to acting. In 2012's Argo, he played real-life Hollywood makeup artist and CIA operative John Chambers. During his research, he discovered something wild. Chambers had actually designed a prosthetic nose for him years earlier while working on the film The Babe. So there was this strange, direct connection between John and the actual man he was now playing. Then, in 2016, for 10 Cloverfield Lane, he isolated himself before filming to prepare for playing a doomsday prepper. And his performance was so unsettling that his co-star Mary Elizabeth Winstead has said she was genuinely, not just theatrically, scared of him during their scenes together. He's admitted the whole shoot got to him after a while. Being stuck in that bunker-like set for weeks does something to a person's head. And then, in 2018, the phone rang. Roseanne was coming back. The revival pulled in over 18 million viewers on premiere night, climbing past 27 million once the delayed viewing numbers were counted, the highest-rated scripted broadcast in nearly 4 years. John described stepping back into Dan Connor like slipping on an old, worn-in pair of boots. The character was right where he'd left him 2 decades earlier. He and Roseanne fell right back into their old rhythm, making each other laugh the exact same way they always had. Then, on May 29, 2018, Roseanne posted a tweet comparing former Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett to an ape. The backlash was instant and enormous. ABC's entertainment president, Channing Dungey, canceled the entire show within hours, calling the comment indefensible. The network reportedly lost around $60 million in ad revenue because of it. Roseanne tried walking it back, blaming the sleep medication Ambien, and the drug's manufacturer had to publicly clarify that racist remarks were not a documented side effect of their product. John fell apart. Not in front of cameras, not publicly, just quietly, the way a person collapses when something they loved gets ripped away before they're ready to let go of it. He later told Jimmy Kimmel he spent 2 weeks essentially non-functional. His wife got sick around the same time. He fell down a flight of stairs. He's talked about it since with that particular dark humor people develop after surviving something absurd. The kind of story that's genuinely awful but, with enough distance, becomes almost funny in how relentless it was. He said he figured he'd tough it out like a grown man and just handle it. Instead, he crashed completely. What he said publicly about Roseanne in the weeks after was messy, and honestly, it still is. He told one interviewer he knew for a fact she wasn't racist, a statement that landed badly in a media climate with zero patience for complicated answers. At the same time, he said he was heartbroken, and at the same time, he said he was trying to just let it go, chalk it up to show business. All three of those things were true for him at once, which is really just what loyalty to a flawed person looks like from the inside. It doesn't wrap up neatly, it's not a single, clean opinion. To her credit, Roseanne gave up her financial stake in the show so the rest of the cast could keep their jobs, and The Conners launched later that same year, on October 16, 2018. John has said he'll never be able to thank her enough for that decision. But he's also admitted that filming the first episode without her sitting next to him felt deeply strange. She was his buddy, the person who made the whole thing fun, and suddenly that piece was just missing. The Conners found its footing anyway, and ran for 6 seasons, wrapping up its story in 2024, with Dan Connor aging along the way in a way that felt honest, heavier, slower, but unmistakably the same guy audiences had known since 1988. In 2023, a reporter asked him point-blank whether he regretted publicly defending Roseanne, right after everything went down. He said no. He talked about attending a press event where the questions turned into a pile-on against her, and how uncomfortable that made him. He said he felt for her. In his own words, he said something like, "I feel terrible about the whole thing. We had a great time, and I love her. She's just her own person." When asked if they'd ever work together again, he admitted he wasn't sure she'd even want to. He said he missed her. And that, right there, is the real regret. It's not a wrong decision, it's not a role he should have turned down, or a bottle he should have put down sooner. It's simpler than that, and somehow heavier. Something wonderful turned into something painful, and the person at the middle of both was the same person, his friend. There's no tidy way to resolve that. You just carry it. You say you love someone, acknowledge they're their own person, and leave the rest alone. At 74 years old, what this man says he regrets most isn't a career misstep. It's a friendship, and the uncertainty of whether it can ever be fully patched back together. He said he missed her. That's really the whole answer. Some things just don't come with a fix. You keep showing up anyway, the way he always has, and you hope that counts for something. So here's the real takeaway from all of this. Talent, fame, decades of incredible work. None of it insulates you from the hardest, messiest part of being human, which is loving people who are complicated. If this story hit you the way it hit us, do us a favor and drop a like. Leave a comment telling us what part stuck with you the most, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We'll see you in the next video.